Not a matter of if, but when crisis will rock your world. I'm Roshini Rajkumar, crisis strategist, licensed attorney, and host of The Crisis Files. In each case file, we explore a hot topic or ripped from the headlines crisis. I like to showcase people who take risks, create success, and are willing to share their insights. Today, that person is Angelina Lawton, CEO and founder of SportsDigita. She works with hundreds of the biggest global brands in sports and entertainment. Her technology organization created the Digideck. Angelina is here for the case file I call Blueprint to Build. Angelina, you created SportsDigita from the ground up. Digideck is all over the world. Forbes named you as one of the top 30 most powerful women in U.S. sports. Success like this doesn't happen overnight. Did you always have a plan?
I absolutely did, from the beginning.
I love hearing that,
Yeah.
First of all. Thanks for admitting that.
Yes.
Tell us about that plan. Like, what did you visualize? Because some of your background, you worked in the NHL selling huge deals. Really, a lot of the sports world is in your blood.
So yes, it really started my journey probably about 15 years ago, really when I was getting serious about starting my own company. There was a lot of work beforehand to lead up to that. But the starting of the company and preparing to build and to where I am right now started about 15 years ago. But there was a lot that went into it before that.
When I think about that, wow, 15 years is not actually that much time for the success that I know because we've talked, you see online, we've read about with you. Give people the visuals. So first of all, the Digideck, such a success story. What is it for people who've never heard about it?
The easiest way to describe it is PowerPoint on steroids. It's the elevator pitch. There's so many softwares out there that people don't understand what space of technology I'm in, and that's the easiest way for me to talk about it. It's presentations on steroids for anything, any story to tell, anything that you need to sell. That is what the Digideck is. It's a cloud-based platform with analytics, creative tools, integration tools, anything that you really think about in selling or telling your story.
So these sports teams, other entertainment brands, they're using the Digideck to sell themselves and their products?
So there are two parts of the business. I have the sports side and I have the business side. On the sports side, the professional teams, they use it for selling tickets and they use it for selling sponsorships. On the business side, so people like United Healthcare or Visa or Dave & Buster's, they will use it to sell whatever their category is. So like Dave & Buster's will use us for all of their events. United Healthcare uses it on their marketing side. Visa for the Olympics. So it could be really any story that they want to tell or obviously selling.
So let's go back to 15 years ago. You had a plan, but could you have imagined what would follow?
You know what? I did. I had to for me to start. I mean, I had to imagine it. I had to visualize it with the idea and execute on that idea. How I got there was even more interesting because I started in the finance industry. I didn't have a lot of experience in sports, but I was in finance before, and that was a really great area for me to be in, to feel comfortable working with so many men how I do now because the finance industry was very similar. I had a friend once tell me about my journey, and the best way to talk about my journey was because I'm a hockey girl, I married a professional hockey player, is to talk about it in periods of what I did. So I'm happy to go through those to tell the story.
Sure.
My first period I'd like to talk about is my Wall Street years. This is where I worked for my father, big bank out of London, and what I did there was I was head of all corporate communications, all marketing. And that's really where I spent about almost 10 years, really kind of honing how to actually interact, present with all of these Wall Street men.
So that was also a male-dominated industry, so you got your foundation going.
Yes. And then from there, I had a little bit of a break. I had my children, but in the second period is what I call my NHL years. And this is where I really got my break, and what got me started into where I am today was with the Tampa Bay Lightning, the NHL team down there. I was very fortunate to have that role. And there again, I was head of all of their marketing, corporate communications. So anything with their logo, branding on it went through my department. And that is really what sparked the idea of SportsDigita today. I was there, had a lot of experience. I understood the inner workings of a team. I was getting exposure to a lot of C-level meetings, so I understood how tickets were being sold, how sponsorships were being sold. And so really understanding that. But really, there was a huge gap in the sports industry, and that was how do you generate revenue with the best possible presentation? They were going out with PowerPoint presentations. They were selling tickets very archaic. They were not digital. They were not customized. And so at that point, I was trying to bring it the most I could to the digital footprint of a sports team. But again, they were very archaic. So what happened there is that my husband was the general manager there. And that was how I got my break, was through the ownership team. My husband introduced me to the ownership team. They had seen what I had done in the financial industry, and they asked me if I would do that for them at the Lightning. I did. Well, we got new owners. New owners meant a new coach and a new GM, and my husband now is without a job. So what happens next is I have a decision to make. I loved my job. I loved working in the NHL. We moved our family from Minnesota to Florida. Now my family was moving back, and of course I can't stay. So I was at a crossroads on what I should do. Should I go work for another team, or should I start something myself? And that is when I thought, what I'm doing for the Tampa Bay Lightning, I can do for any team. So 500 plus teams later, I feel like we have accomplished that goal.
You kind of made your point.
We did. We did. We are a dominant force in the sports world as far as a technology that they're all using to generate the revenue. And that's the part of the P&L that you want to be for a team. You want to be on that side where you're part of the revenue side of the business. So that is what we've done. And because of that, organically, now I'm into the third period, which is what I call my entrepreneurial years, which is SportsDigita, which I started. But now organically, we've grown outside of that quite a bit because of the success in sports. Sports is a very difficult industry to break into.
And especially as a female owner.
100%. I'm a female that was in the tech world, in the financial world, and now the sports world. So it really is a triple whammy of three industries that you are not a typical...
Yeah, you don't just get, hey, welcome in.
No, I mean, you're fighting in each of those categories, sports world, tech, and finance. All three of those, you are in the minority. You are definitely not the majority, especially being a tech women founder. There's just not many of us.
Did you let that get you down, or how did you counter that? Obviously, you found success.
It's interesting because a lot of people ask me that question. They want to know, the dirty stories, oh, how hard was it, and what did it do, and, do you feel terrible, and all that. It was actually the opposite for me. The opposite for me is I thrived knowing that I was one of very few. It was almost like an advantage for me because you would walk into a meeting, a room, a conference or whatever, and there's just not many of us. So
easy to spot you.
It's easy to spot. They want to find out what you're about. Do you really know what you're talking about? What's going on? And so the minute, you've got that first 5 to 10 minutes of a meeting where they're looking at you going, what the hell does she know? And then after that, once you prove yourself, you start talking, and then it's like, okay. And then you stand out because there is a lot of men in finance, a lot of men in technology, and all men in sports.
Wow. What are some nuggets for those men who are either thinking about hiring someone like you, in their own organizations? I would like to think it's not a risk anymore to hire a woman in a previously thought of more male-dominated job or field.
I think it's the exact opposite. I think that people are looking for women sales leaders, women developers, women in higher level, C-level suite jobs at professional sports teams. If you are a woman looking for a C-suite or a president role in sports, you're definitely going to be looked at. There is a movement that I am seeing as far as really trying to find women for these roles. Even just with my daughter, I'm trying to teach her. Think about sports, think about sales and tech, especially sales. I mean, there's just not a lot of women sales leaders at all.
Well, and that's interesting you bring that up because in my work as an executive coach, when I'm working with these different leaders, one of the gaps sometimes for someone's trajectory up to the C-suite is maybe they never did have a P&L. They were never overseeing and responsible for the numbers.
Right.
So my advice, if it's a client of mine or someone that's under them, make sure you get a P&L. I mean, it's good for men, but it's really good for women.
Right. When you are on that side of the business, you are definitely if there's layoffs and cuts and things like that, you are going to be the last to go, number one. But if you are part of generating revenue and you're doing a really great job, I mean, you're really safe and you are really adding and valuable for a company like that, any kind of company.
So we want to talk with you today about the good blueprint. So you've laid out your blueprint was built according to the 3 periods of a hockey game because you love hockey, I love hockey. I can totally visualize that. But what is a good blueprint? What are some fundamentals of a blueprint that anyone listening, woman, man, young person, whatever, whether they want to go the more entrepreneurial route or they're working for an employer and they just really want to build their own good personal brand?
So if we're talking about personal brand, I think that's a big part of the blueprint. Let's just say that I'm going to talk about the blueprint as it relates to my business. The number one thing is you have to have the great idea. That's the hardest part. That's what people don't understand, is that number one, it's your idea. Two, then it's the absolute execution. You have to be able to execute and not get caught up in the little stuff. It's like a really important fact that why most entrepreneurs will fail. They'll either fail because of money or execution. The personal brand for being part of your blueprint to build a company is absolutely critical. It's everything. There are so many software companies out there. I need to be able to stand out. I think that a lot of our success has been because I have been able to put myself out there, or have been willing to put myself out there as a CEO and to become part of that brand and set us apart. My son right now is starting a company, Side Shift, out of University of Wisconsin-Madison, and he's taking notes from me as far as building that brand, and that is how they are also gaining traction and revenue.
And there are so many spaces today across social media platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram, and others that we didn't even have. I mean, certainly they were just early years of my starting my business at 18 plus years ago after I left television news. But now there are so many different platforms to use that could help you grow that personal brand or your business brand.
Social media is just now in the last 3 to 5 years. But if I would have had that at the beginning, it is a game changer for any entrepreneurs now because you have this to be part of your blueprint. Social media, your personal brand, things like that were not a thing, 10, 15 years ago. If you would have said personal brand, they were just like, maybe they were thinking about like an A-Rod or J-Lo, just like that personal brand. Now, personal brand is game for people like myself, people like yourself.
Everybody.
And if you can figure out how to build your personal brand and have that be part of your blueprint, is really the way to go.
And then it is also important to protect the personal brand. So you talked about to have a good business, you need a great idea, you need to execute. And I would guess in life, that kind of applies to a lot of different areas, right? What are some of the danger zones or the gaps that we really want to be mindful of so that our personal brand isn't tarnished or damaged?
To me, I will bring it to how I deal with my clients. Our reputation in the sports world is so critical. And that is how you do well with that is you service. You do what you say you're going to do. You service them. You are absolutely always watching out for them. You can't grow in sports the way we have if you do not have a good reputation or a good brand. It's not the great word to use, but sports is incestual. Everybody knows everybody. And so you have to deal with integrity, honesty. I keep bringing up service because that is the name of the game in our world. I mean, it's just as far as being there for your clients, making sure they're getting what they're needing. If they are in a bind, helping them out.
And your word really does matter.
It does. I boiled that down to how I feel like in the company, but for myself, and like with friendships and how I deal with in business, it's the same thing. You're not always going to do the right thing, but you're going to try, and you're going to try to figure out the best way to handle a situation, whether it be with a client or a friend, in the best possible manner.
And that way, even if mistakes are made,
right,
they're a lot more forgivable.
Right.
We learn from them.
Right.
They may not be even intentional. It's just a mistake and you learn from them. Let's talk a moment about raising capital. And
yes.
What are some of the tips you can give? Because what I still hear, and we've had venture types on in the past on the Crisis Files, is it's extraordinarily difficult for women. Like maybe 5% of or less of the money is going to women.
It is very true. I do follow and I have interaction with many women venture capitalists, and there are more of them than we think. You have to find them, like Amy Griffin out of New York, G9 Ventures. I happen to have my biggest investor is a woman, Jenny Just. She's out of Peak Six, out of Chicago. She's one of the top 50 self-made billionaires. She's an incredible woman. She is also doing a really great job of finding people like myself, women entrepreneurs. If you are a woman and you can kind of seek those people out, and they're hard to find, but once you find them, there is a huge support system for
and
you.
Loyalty,
and they're looking to build women. I mean, that's what they're looking for. Like I said, you asked me earlier about the industries that I was in. It's the same for venture capital. Venture capital, when they are talking to me and I'm a woman tech founder, that is something that they're going to take a double look at because there's just not many of us. As a woman, you should not be detoured. I think you just have to be really nimble in how you find these people and these resources. And I think there's really good ones out there. But it's not easy. I mean, even when you do get access to them and you do get in front of them, your business plan has to be really solid.
You have both a son and a daughter. You're teaching both of them.
2 sons and a daughter.
2 sons and a daughter.
Yeah.
Don't want to forget the other son.
Because if he's listening to the podcast, he'd be like, what?
Maybe one of them just gets photographed tomorrow. I don't know. That's a family thing. You're going to have to work it out at home.
Very true.
But 2 sons and a daughter, is there different parenting when, as you're helping them to launch and they see the success of their mom, they see the success of their dad, but you want all three of them to succeed.
Right.
Or are you giving them the same advice? It's, have a great idea, have execution, follow your word.
It's interesting. My 3 children, my oldest, Jack, he works for me at the company, and he is definitely a corporate route person. So I do deal with him differently. He is involved in very important things for the company. And I see what his trajectory is. And so I am really focusing and encouraging what he is doing. Nick, on the other hand, 24, out of Madison, he is never going to work in an office. He has zero desire. He wants to be able to build his own company. He's following in my footsteps. And so I encourage him and parent him much more. I mean, I can give him a lot more advice on what to do.
And he listens.
Yes, and no. It's like the biggest classic, I know, Mom. Nick, maybe you don't know. Maybe I've been doing this for a little bit and you should listen a little bit. So it's always, my husband and I always laugh. It's like, did you say I know? And I'm like, oh yeah, he knows everything. Gabby is a much different breed, and she is a woman. And I am taking a lot of interest, obviously, because she is my daughter. And I want to teach her all the things that I have learned. And my biggest lesson to her is, and I know it sounds repetitive, but it's like, Gabby, look at sales, look at tech, look at finance, look at these industries, because you will stand out if you are good, if you can be smart and you can do this, because there's just not a lot of them. So she just got her first internship with the Minnesota Vikings this summer. She's super excited. So I'm kind of really coaching her and teaching her, okay, so now when you're with the Vikings and you're this summer, like, what are we going to do? What are we looking for? How are we going to get to the next level? How are we going to take as much as we can from this and learn? And then next summer, she wants to work for the NFL. So I'm kind of encouraging that with her. She just needs to know that she can do it, and that she sees me, that I've done it, and I want to just be able to continue to build her and build her and build her. So she never even thinks about that she's a woman in any
or
of these
that she
industries.
can't. And that's really my hope, is that we finally, and I thought we would have by now in our lifetimes, get to a point where we're not still having,
right,
oh, you're being treated differently because you're a girl or a woman, or oh, it's more challenging.
Yeah.
I just wish we could get over that.
I agree. I mean, the glass ceiling is just a thing of the past, in my opinion.
Yeah. And we have to actually think of it that way.
Right.
And then it becomes so.
Right. Right.
Well, such great advice. Any other sneak peeks of things you can tell us that are going on with SportsDigita, or any lessons that you want to leave us with?
I think sneak peeks for us is just continuing to dominate in ticketing and sponsorship. There's something I have my eye on as far as like these new stadium builds around the country. There's so many of them. These teams have so much money, and these PE funds and growth funds are coming in, and they are building these massive stadiums, or LA Live at Crypto Arena. It's just a part of the business that we are starting to focus on and having some success. So that to me is really exciting. Also building out our business side, very exciting, because it's just a whole different world. Almost like I have 2 businesses now. I'm running the sports side and the business side. And then really, we all know the markets have been pretty much crap these last year and a half as far as that. So everyone is watching what's happening for valuations and what are the multiples and when are we going to get out of this mess and interest rates. So my company is really just, we're sitting, we're waiting, we're watching, we're in a good place. But we could be an acquisition, could be something like that in our industry. I'm really looking at a lot of great things.
But you're patient to wait for the right thing.
I am. And I have been lucky with that, with the runway that we have. It's very important. That's another tidbit for your blueprint. You got to have the idea, the execution, and you got to have the money. And you have to be really fiscally responsible to make it, because as you know, how many startups don't make it. We are sitting on the sidelines, but we're really kind of ready for our next move. We have really established ourselves in sports, but there's a lot more for us because, as you know, PowerPoint can be used for so much more than sports. It can be used for any really industry.
I love it. Well, so much good information, and we'll have to have you back.
Yeah, there'll definitely be exciting things in the next, I would say, 12 to 18 months. That obviously
I love it. Well, open invitation to come back. Thank you so much, Angelina, for your candor. And it's always a delight to talk with you. And I'm so glad you are finally on the Crisis Files. And people can find out more about Angelina at thedigideck.com or Angelina Lawton on LinkedIn. Today's Crisis Brief is brought to you by Navigate Forward. Number 1. For any blueprint to succeed, you need a great idea, execution, and money. Number 2, personal brand is critical, whether you are a business owner or building any type of career. Number 3, don't let gender keep you from finding investors of all genders. Navigate Forward helps executives discover what inspires them. Since 2008, Navigate Forward is the trusted source when companies and individuals navigate career transition, seek corporate board service, or plan a fulfilling retirement chapter. Learn more at navigateforward.com. Follow us on YouTube and Instagram at The Crisis Files. Rate, review, and subscribe to The Crisis Files on your platform of choice. Check out our website, thecrisisfiles.com, to catch up on all case files in one easy spot. I'm Roshini Rajkumar. Join me next time on The Crisis Files.